Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here today, Locked On Big 12 podcast. On today's show, the latest on conference realignment. The Big 12 targeting 4 teams potentially from the Pac-12 to add. The latest on Oregon, Washington, and Notre Dame, how that could impact the Big 12. And does USC and UCLA's move to the Big 10 mean OU and Texas could leave the conference sooner than anticipated? All that and more coming up on the Locked On Big 12 podcast.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, July 4th, 2022. Hope you all are having a great July 4th. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. Best place to post and find jobs is at LinkedIn. We appreciate you all making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. If you guys are on the YouTube side, or if you're listening to the podcast via audio, what I want you all to do is make sure that you subscribe. We made a big push last week. 5 days ago, we were at 899. Right now, we're at 956 subscribers on YouTube. So let's keep the momentum rolling. Tell your friends about this show. We are all things Big 12, all things college sports, but with that Big 12 focus, and it's a great time to cover the league because there's a whole lot going on. But make sure you guys subscribe. We really do appreciate, and I do appreciate all of the interactions that we get. We do a weekly mailbag. Make sure you guys leave your questions either as comments in our videos, or we have a post that goes up on our community tab where you guys can leave your questions as well. Once again, I'm your host, Josh Neighbors. Find me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find the show at LO Big 12 is where you can find us on Twitter. Let us know what you think of the show there as well. Obviously we're going to attack the rumors and the news. It's not even rumors at this point. It just sounds like the Big 12 is going to have a meeting, at least with Arizona. They're going to target ASU, Utah, and Colorado. And that's really exciting. But think back. I want you all to think back to a year ago when we first got the OU and Texas news. And I'll tell you what, man, it was a really difficult time for a lot of us because if you work in the industry, there is a certain amount of uncertainty. If you're a diehard fan of a school, there's a lot of uncertainty. If you are an administrator, you work in athletics, or you work for one of these conferences like the Pac-12 or the Big 12, or the ACC even, or the G5 leagues as well, there is so much uncertainty right now for all of you. And I just want to note that I worked the Big 12 shows last summer. And for SiriusXM, which is my other job. I also worked the Pac-12 shows. And I worked Pac-12 today last Friday. I worked with Jeff Schwartz, who's an Oregon alum, really well-known guy in college football media. I also worked with Mike Yam, who works the NFL Network, but is also based out there, has covered the league for a long time. They had Sean O'Connell on, who calls fights for ESPN for PFL, but also went to Utah and is, host on that channel. And I have to say, there is, think back to where we were as a conference. There is so much sadness. There is so much uncertainty. There is so much doubt about the future. I mean, Jeff went to Oregon and even he was sad and upset and was doubting. And I think Oregon's going to be in a great position. I think Washington will be in good shape as well. But people at those schools, they're not, and the administrations and the Pac-12 networks, those people are not, free of concern and worry like this, like a lot of stuff in life. This affects people's jobs, and I know it's college football and it seems like a lot of fun, but it can cause some uncertainty. We heard about OU and Texas leaving the Big 12 last year. There was a part of me that thought about, well, how long does this podcast continue for? Will it go much longer? And then I think about, will I even get shifts anymore at SiriusXM because the Big 12 conference might not be around much longer? What does that mean for my future, my work? And there are a lot of people in a variety of ways who have concerns about this stuff, and it's very real. Sure, it's a game. We're talking about college football, but you all know how deep the care and love for this sport runs in our community, whether it be fans, whether it be administrators, depending on the administrator. Sometimes some of you feel like some of them don't care, and I might actually agree with you on some of those things. Whether it be people who work in TV, and I don't mean the television executives. I mean the people who are behind the cameras, the people who are on camera, right? And the people who are production assistants, the people who are working at HR at these companies and things like that. Like, we're all fans. We all get affected by this stuff. So while, and I was not immune to this too. Last week, first show I did wasn't really about that. It was about, it was about lamenting where the sport's heading, but also, I was talking about laugh at the alliance. Well, George Kliavkoff's going to be okay. I think the entire alliance is some egg on his face, and I think it's some egg on the face of anybody who thought it was serious and said, well, this is death of the Big 12. They're not aligned. But George Kliavkoff's going to be okay if the Pac-12 folds, right? Somebody who is, a production assistant or who wants to get into the industry at Pac-12 Network, who's 22 years old, or how about a kid who's 18 now? And, I have friends who went to Arizona State. One of them works the Fox station there now. The opportunities maybe to be a production assistant for the Pac-12 Network might go away now if the Pac-12 goes away. Potential careers get taken away. People who work there now are in danger too. So I think it's important that we consider those people. Not like I'm asking for sympathy for covering college sports, but I think too often we're like, okay, next step, realignment. Team X goes here. Team X, Team Y goes there. I did it the other day. The video we had the other day was about Oregon and Washington or Utah joining the Pac-12 or the Big 12. We do it, but let's just take a second to think about, all right, this stuff really does affect people's lives. That's life. Decisions get made for money and a lot of reasons. People get laid off, but it can be scary because these things happen so quickly and they shutter the foundations of these conferences, which at times feel like real institutions to us. And, the schools are institutions, obviously, and that's what matters most. But these things, Pac-12, the Big 12 are things that we know and love. And, we've done hundreds of episodes. We're nearing 400 episodes of Locked On Big 12 podcast. And I've worked years at SiriusXM now covering the Big 12. We've invested years into this league, and it feels like those things get on the rocks in just days. All of a sudden, it's very difficult to deal with. So I wanted to at least address that first, that we might talk about brands and logos here and numbers of, numbers of teams, 12, 16, for how many teams are in a conference, or Arizona, Utah, Arizona State, but there are people who work behind the scenes who are, who have jobs that are tied to these things, tied to the money-making part of it. And, there is a lot of uncertainty right now. And I understand that. And there's even some on the Big 12 side, right? Okay, if we're heading towards super conferences, are people going to start looking at our teams, at our Baylors, at our Oklahoma States, at our Kansases? Are they going to start trying to poach them too? Sure, that's got to be a concern. So let's just, once again, consider that. Not asking for sympathy, but we have to, there is a human cost to it. There is a human cost to everything. All right, so latest news on the Big 12 front. All right, the Big 12 front of things on this is that there is, and I'll read from Heartland College Sports here. They mentioned the report. Matthew Postins wrote this yesterday on Sunday. The Big 12 is meeting on Tuesday about adding 4 new members in the Pac-12, according to a report from Wildcat Authority, which is part of the 24/7 Sports Network. They cover Arizona. They wrote that sources indicated that the meeting would be about Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado joining the Big 12. The report noted that this would be the biggest discussion to take place regarding the topic. Also, there was reporting from Brett McMurphy at the Action Network on Thursday. The Big 12 might be interested in the 4 schools. So obviously, I think at this point we can say that there is some interest. Here's the quote from Brett McMurphy. With USC and UCLA giving the Big 10 16 members and Oklahoma and Texas giving the SEC 16 members, one possibility is the Big 12 also to get 16 members, a source said. The Big 12 could add Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, along with members BYU, Cincy, Houston, UCF, to get to 16 after OU and Texas leave for the SEC. From there, it's been conflicting reports. The day after McMurphy's report, CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd reported the Big 12 was not interested in poaching any Pac-12 teams at this time. A source quoted, a Big 12 official, why, in response to pursuing Pac-12 teams. I mentioned this too the other day. I have to say this. What a bad week for the Big 12 sources. I'm not sure who these people are, but the comments that have been made over the last week, whether it be about, the new commissioner, Brett Yormark, or about wanting to potentially add teams, it's been negativity after negativity after negativity from Big 12 ADs and Big 12 officials. maybe it shows you this disorganization is a reason why Oklahoma and Texas left the conference. I have to say the organization of the conference does not look good. This is a challenge that Brett Yormark is going to have to overcome. It sounds like he's going to have to do some in-house cleaning before we can really turn our attention, turn our focus to the things happening outside the league. I mean, both will be happening simultaneously, obviously, but Brett Yormark's going to have to handle both at once because the conversations, the quotes, the things being said inside the Big 12, in my opinion, have not been a good look for the league. When it comes to these four teams, look, would I love to target Washington and Oregon? Yes. When Andy Staples wrote his article, I think it was like the Wheel of 24 or whatever, he mentioned 24 teams that ratings-wise really do give you a boost. Funny enough, UCLA was not one of those teams, but they go to the Big 12 or the Big 10 anyway. Two schools on there that currently do not have a home are Washington and Oregon. And now this is where this ties in. There was some reporting the other day. I'm totally blanking on where it's coming from, but the Big 10 has interest in Notre Dame. And with that interest, it's kind of put Oregon and Washington on hold. And so I think if they're on hold, I would target those two schools. But those two schools, I think Oregon especially has a luxury waiting this thing out. I don't think anybody's going to take Nike's biggest brand in college football. I mean, like Oregon is synonymous with Nike. Obviously, Phil Knight's connection does that, but they're such a huge provider in this sport. I mean, Nike is it's about apparel brands. It's the most well-known apparel brand basically across the world in terms of athletic gear. Their number one college brand is Oregon. When you think Nike and you think college athletics, you think Oregon. There's nobody else that you think about. And that's, Jordan Brand, Carolina, sure. But like Nike, Jordan is a subsidiary of Nike. Nike is still bigger than Jordan is, right? That's just the way it works. Jordan's cool. I love Jordan. Jordan's awesome. But Nike's the godfather, right? Is the godfather of Jordan anyway. Not him to himself, just the brand. So you think about that. Like, I think they're going to be okay. I think Washington, because they're in Seattle, such a big TV market, and they are on that 24 teams listed, I think they end up being okay. They've got strong academics. They make sense in the Big 10 as well if we're going to do these cross-country super leagues. So I actually think the Big 12 is probably out of the Oregon and Washington sweepstakes. And that's where I'd start with that. On the front of these four teams, Arizona, ASU, Utah, and Colorado. Colorado is where I think a lot of us go first because we know the tie, right? We know that tie is there. Now, their success in basketball, actually, they've been up and I think Tad Boyle is a pretty good coach, but like they put a lot of players in the league. Most popular one to think of recently, obviously, is Derek White, who's was on the Boston Celtics. But like they put players like that in the league. They have a good track record. They're a pretty decent basketball program. They'd fit in from that perspective. Also, they've been here before. Their football desperately needs a facelift really badly. Utah, that's the best current football team you could add. The advantages to adding Utah are, number one, hopefully you get the last few years out of Kyle Whittingham. I know we talked about him flirting with possibility of retirement, but like they became a Power 5 league that got that, and Kyle Whittingham has been pretty open about this. Like going to the Pac-12 got them in the room for a lot of teams, for a lot of guys they didn't have before, and their coaching was really taking care of the rest. Their player development, their talent development is some of the best across the country. And you saw it last year on full display when they were in the Rose Bowl. But I mean, the fact that they dealt with this program, guys, last year that had two separate players die, and they dealt with the heartbreak and sadness of that and turned their season around and went on this magical march to the Rose Bowl. This wasn't some crap team doing it, though. It's a great coach, a great coaching staff that turned to a quarterback and Cam Rising got the job done, that had great players on both sides of the football. And I really think that, as long as they keep Kyle Whittingham, keep things going. Number two reason it's awesome is because they have a natural rival in BYU. This would bring having the Holy War in conference. That is a huge benefit. That's really interesting to me. Having that be a conference game every single season is really interesting. And whether you go, pods, whatever it is, like having that, I think is a huge asset. Also, it's a travel partner there. So it makes it makes things a little bit easier for BYU. It kind of pushes the Big 12 a bit more to the West. Arizona is where I go next. Jed Fish is building something interesting there. They're beginning to get better. But Arizona and Arizona State have access to Los Angeles. They have access to Southern California. Therefore, California as a whole, expanding kind of the Big 12 at that point is going to occupy most of the southern part of the United States. Think about that. It's going to be Arizona, Texas, obviously, which kind of helps you, Houston, which basically kind of helps you push your way into Louisiana. Now, I do not have a foothold in those middle, kind of the middle south or the, southeast, like central time zone states, right? Like the, Alabama, Mississippi. No, obviously no presence in Georgia then as you go further to the east, but they do end up now having Florida. So it would cover more of this space. And obviously now geography and stuff like that, like it's not going to matter as much anymore. But you have to think the one thing that this will add is another great basketball program. I mean, think about the number of players that have come out of there. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton lately. We saw Ben Mathurin this year in Arizona, and Tommy Lloyd put together one hell of a season this year. And so Arizona is what I'm interested in. I mean, I was interested in Arizona State. Arizona State should take hold of this life raft. This Arizona State has currently been, it's been a disaster for what's been happening there with the loss of all the coaches, Ray Anderson standing up for Herm Edwards, but they've lost all these coaches, all of these players. And obviously Bobby Hurley does not have basketball there really humming at this point in time. So I think grabbing this life raft for Arizona State is good, and they can kind of try to get their footing back. We know things can change pretty fast, but this Herm Edwards thing, they were winning some games. The problem was during COVID, he was just so blatantly breaking the rules that it's going to cost him. It's already cost the program, probably going to cost him his job. And I mean, Ray Anderson, has been under a lot of heat for the way things have been going there. It's been a disaster so far. So, Arizona State to me should be better than Colorado. I'm more pumped about Colorado coming to Arizona State because they have a long way to go, and I'm definitely more excited about Arizona in that state than I am. So they all offer different things, but they push you to 16. They solidify you as the best. I mean, when you add a brand like Arizona to your basketball, anytime you do that, that is one of the national brands. Now it's once again more of a West Coast thing, but that is a national brand. That obviously Tommy Lloyd in year one showed you how good it can be. And look, they're going to have another good season this year, but I think Arizona definitely has a chance to be, to add so much for this conference basketball wise. But I've seen a lot of you suggest hey, Kansas could get poached by the Big 12 or the Big 10. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But all we know is that they're going to discuss these four teams. Would these four teams accept? I'd have to think they would. I don't think the Big 10 is going to be coming for Arizona. I don't think they're coming for ASU. Maybe Utah, but I doubt it. I think BYU, the natural partner, has to be something that is really appealing because you end up with those two. You're going to end up still in a Power 5 league still together. I mean, I think it's kind of look, do they want their independence from each other? I don't know. That's a great question, actually, for Jake Hatch, which we'll ask him tomorrow night on our roundtable. He's the host of Locked On Cougars. He'll probably have a really good answer for us on that front. But let's see what the news comes out as of Tuesday. But it gets you all primed for this week because it could be wild with some of the news. All right, quick word from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you all by LinkedIn. Every single day, folks, every single week, 40 million people flock to LinkedIn. Job seekers are there. So if you need somebody, LinkedIn is a place to do it. Sun's coming out for small businesses here in the summer. And as we're out of COVID now, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond. The world's largest professional network, of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile to spread the word. that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn jobs number one in delivering quality hires and versus leading competitors. So go to linkedin.com today/college. That's LinkedIn /college. Terms and conditions do apply. All right. So one other piece of news that we should mention today, and this is from the Oklahoman. Barry Trammell writes this. He says, talking basically about UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, could that mean an early exit for both OU and Texas? So UCLA and USC are going to play football in the Big Ten in the 2024-2025 season. Now, assuming that Fox re-ups with the Big Ten, I think that's what we all believe is going to occur. I don't think we've gotten the official word on this yet. Double checking that. Yeah, we still don't know what exactly it's going to be. But I'm sure now they're going to strengthen their position with adding USC and UC. Well, we'll see about UCLA, but I mean, I think USC obviously is going to add to that position that they have right now. So this begs the question: would Disney, ESPN, would they want to add OU and Texas sooner? To no pun intended there. To make sure that their product is as strong as possible as the Big Ten makes their product as strong as possible. Remember last time I talked about this, I'd given a theory a little while ago where I said, look, here's what I think this is going to happen. If it changes, excuse me. If it changes, I wouldn't be surprised because everything is changing so fast, so quickly. So, anything I say now, don't, it's not gospel at this point. Well, my opinion's now changed on this. I mean, I think this is definitely a really strong argument. These are two competing. I mean, ultimately they're going to work together in some way, shape, or form. But these are two. ESPN and Fox. Like this. Once this playoff expands, I'm sure some of them will have. Well, who knows? But I think these two mega conferences will lead to a situation where that they're working a little bit hand in hand. But if we're competing Big Ten versus the SEC, they might want to add OU and Texas sooner. OU and Texas will go into their new leagues, receiving full shares of the SEC's new contract with ESPN, which kicks in 2024. It's expected to boost conference appropriations for each school past $100 million. The school of the Big 12 has been paying out about $38 million per year to its members, a respectable number until the world went crazy, is what Barry Trammell says. But yeah, could ESPN and Disney want to hustle this up and make this move faster? I think they definitely would. So I think maybe, let's see what happens this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if with what's happening now, this is the last year that we see OU and Texas. And I would not be surprised if we don't even get that 14-team league that we mentioned. Or if we do, it's just going to be for a season. So in 2024, the super leagues will be intact. That's where my mind went when I read Barry's article. I think he makes a good point. They're definitely going to want to get in on that. So that's something to watch here as we move towards, the season starting. I already hear about those talks. So things are watching this week. 1, Notre Dame involvement with the conference. I don't think we're going to see Notre Dame join a conference. I've remained steadfast on this point. I don't think that they will be joining a conference. I think any college football playoff expansion will just include Notre Dame automatically anyway. I think the playoffs going to include it. There's too much money to be made with Notre Dame. Everybody wants them. I'm not sure they join a conference because I think that if they do, they're going to ask for more television revenue. But let's see, Notre Dame's current, I'm trying to find the figure for it. As we're doing, this is on the fly here, folks. So their current TV deal, let's see if we can find a figure for that. So they bring in $15 million annually from their TV deal. That's what it says Notre Dame from NBC. And then you think about, what they would also get from, because their partnership with ESPN as well. So I think Notre Dame, it might be, because they value their independence, but at a certain point, it's going to ask, like, they're always going to be involved, right? They bring so much money to the table that Notre Dame's always going to be involved. But $100 million a year at least, and maybe they could ask for a little bit more if they join a conference because of what a strong brand they are. So they could say, hey, we want a little bit more money than that. Now, I doubt that's going to, maybe start sharing the pie differently in these conferences. We'll see, but that could kind of lead down to a slippery slope as well. So I'm curious to see what Notre Dame does. Does Notre Dame think it's now prudent to join a conference? They think they're fine with their independence. They think, they won't get flushed out in any way, shape, or form if they don't do this. I'm curious about that because that's going to dictate what happens with Oregon and Washington. So we'll watch for Notre Dame news. I don't think we see them join. I mean, hell, who knows at this point, but I don't think we see them join a conference this year. Watch what that means for Oregon and Washington, and obviously stay tuned for OU and Texas, and definitely stay tuned to see what we hear about Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and Arizona State coming up here because it's going to be very, very interesting. All right, one more word from our sponsors as we get out of here today. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. BetOnline's your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season. You guys can find that there. F1, NASCAR, UFC, big card this weekend, boxing, all of that at BetOnline and BetOnline.net today. It's your number one source for all things sports wagering, including live betting, esports, and scores. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can follow me at JoshNeighbors_. Make sure you guys subscribe. Please subscribe, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, tell your friends. Let's get this thing to 1,000 before the end of July. I know we can do it. So let's set that goal. Let's meet that goal. Hope we can do that. Make sure you guys get us wherever you guys get your podcasts as well if you can't watch on YouTube. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.